Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good day, whatever time it is for you. In my neck of the woods, it's pretty early in the morning. And I want to talk to you about something important. About the ascension, about the ascension, about the return of Christ, about whatever is happening in the world right now. Because it truly is the return. Excuse me. Camera started and throat said womp womp. There are a lot of things happening in the world that can be overwhelming, that can feel unjust and unwarranted and heart-wrenching, right? Like hard to handle, hard to swallow, hard to understand, hard to fathom. And a lot of people are familiar with the shifting in energies at this point, and a lot of people are familiar with the word ascension. Less are understanding that it truly is the return of Christ, and that's what it is. But today I want to talk about something important. The truth about the return of Christ, the truth about having a Savior, and also softening the heart. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and sometimes you know how things affect you more than you expected them to, or in ways that you didn't see coming. Yeah, that happened to me too. But I feel like in the moment when I needed it the most. Have you ever found yourself asking God, send me a sign, send me something, I need something, right? Like, I need your help right now. I need you to hear me. I need proof of something right now. I need your help right now. And oftentimes when we say that, we expect something's going to come a certain way. But it turns out it always comes, and it always comes in ways we least expect it, or from people we least expect it from. And sometimes it may come from where you expect it. It just depends. But you'll find what you need. You'll find that God does listen. God does provide. And not oftentimes in the way we want it, but every time in the way we need it. God knows what we need more than we do. God knows what we need more than we do. What does that mean? Oftentimes we find ourselves thinking we need certain things, right? Because we are in... You ever heard of the term outside perspective? Well, we are in it, right? We are in the thick of it. We are right in the center. And sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to see beyond that limited scope of in the centerness, of right in it, right? And oftentimes we may need that outside perspective, that little bit of outside something that says, hey, I can see this a little bit differently than you can. That's God. God can see things we don't see. So we may think we need something. We may think we want it to be a certain way. But in the end, we find that what we actually got was exactly what we needed. You know, in the return of Christ, or in the ascension, in the end of times, as some would call it, or the end of ways outside of God, that God calls it, we realize we have to change. We have to change a lot. We have to get out of our comfort zone. And you can deem that as a sacrifice. I know in bringing through the return of Christ, I had to sacrifice a lot. And I do mean a lot. I had to sacrifice my vessel, the life that I had, and the love of my life. For the betterment of all. For something outside of myself. For something that wasn't quite tangible. And during these shifting times and these moments of growth, or whatever we have to be going through, because that's what it's about, right? Growth and expansion. Finally letting go of things that we didn't even realize we had to let go of, you know? Seeing things we didn't maybe necessarily always want to see. we have to go deeper into our heart space. We have to go deeper into uncomfortable spaces. We have to choose to fully heal. And sometimes that's painful. So how do we soften the heart? How do we soften the heart when the world was so broken and so painful, and we all got into these comfort zones or survival of the fittest spaces, right? Survivalists. And we had to be tough. We had to get to spaces where we were absolutely tough, and we were anchored into that. We were anchored into ways of survival, and even oftentimes found fun in that, right? I know I did. So what you guys may not know is on my journey and my DM's journey, we had to quit things that we were doing. We had to let go of things that we may not have wanted to. Like, for instance, I used to smoke a lot of pot. In Colorado, it's legal. And it was one of the first states to legalize it. It was a big thing. But even before it was legal, like, I came from a family who did a lot more things than that. Okay, so that was all that I did. And I thought I was good. I'm like, well, I'm good. But I loved it. I enjoyed it. It's something that I did often, if not every day. It was my identity. It was part of my identity. It was part of, you know, what I would do for fun. It was part of even just cleaning my house. Oh my gosh. My dog scared me. Come here, baby. Come here. H, come here. Come here. Little goofus. Sorry, guys. She scared me. She scarified me. What you did? What'd you get into, huh? What'd you get into? She had to join me. She's always joined me on my videos. But that was my comfort zone, right? Like, I truly was comfortable in the way I was living. I was set in my ways a lot, right? Like, I had my routines. I had my thing. And it may have been survival, but it also was what I knew. And I remember after my awakening, that came to a certain point where God asked me to quit doing it. And I was like, sure, anything for you. But it was actually harder than I thought it would be, because it was so ingrained. It was such my routine for a very long time. I mean, since I was like 13 years old. Because remember, I grew up in a house full of major drugs. So we find, and you'll have to forgive me, I have to travel and deal with my dog. But you'll find that we have to let go of things. We have to get out of our comfort zone. Sometimes we have to do things we didn't even know that were an issue. One of them being softening our heart. I had to let my dog out and in, and now she wants her morning treat. Although, does she really need one? So, you know, in talking to somebody yesterday, I realized that sometimes we truly have to get out of our comfort zone. And I knew that. I knew we had to get out of our comfort zone. But what stuck out to me the most is we've grown accustomed to a certain way of living. We really truly have. We've grown accustomed, even if it was wrong, even if it was really truly miserable in the scheme of things, right? Even if we were really truly miserable and we weren't exactly happy, we had to become accustomed to it, and we found joy in it somewhere, right? Like we found comfort in it somewhere. And then we realize we don't have a choice now. We truly have to let it go. We truly have to decide once and for all to grow fully, to get out of that comfort zone and to see things that we may not have wanted to see, to feel things that are truly hard to feel. And so, can it be angering? Yeah, it can. It can cause anger. It can cause uncomfort and disdain at times, right? Like, why do I have to change? But the thing about that is, and this reminds me of my DM a lot. My old DM. I don't know my new one. But the one I knew, the one I lost. Sometimes when you're surrounded by things for so long, or you do things for so long, or you're surrounded by the same certain people for so long, you don't realize how important it is to let it go, or how much you feel good letting it go, until you truly get past that letting it go. Like, I remember God even telling him that, hey, you got to get out of the people you're surrounded with because you can't see clearly. You got to get away from some of those things just for a moment because you can't see clearly. And in addictions, it's the same thing. Or like, we may not think it's an addiction, but in our comfort zone of use of something. It's in our system, even medications, right? People who are on medications a long time have grown accustomed to the thought that they need them because that's part of that programming. It's part of our customization. It's part of our shackles that they bind you and they blind you, okay? And you don't realize until you're away from them for so long how much you're glad to be away from them, okay? Like, I used to kind of, not understand why I would have to quit smoking pot. Like, why? It's not that harmful. It's natural. It grows in the earth. Like, why? Why, God? Why? But I could tell at times, too, that anytime something good was about to happen, or anytime my DM and I were really close, or the love was palpable, it would hit me. I would all of a sudden have these cravings, and all of a sudden have this need and want to go do that. And then if I succumb to it, it would cause this blindness and this state of detachment and things that were not good. And it was outside of that love. It was outside of the pureness of that love. So sometimes we don't know how much better off we'll be without something until we've been without it long enough to feel love, to feel how good it feels to not have it, and to realize how much it was like taking away from some good shit. You know what I mean? Now, as far as love is difficult, right? Because I know who I am. And I know that I have unconditional love for others to a degree that it hurt myself at times, right? And so much so that I sacrificed everything that I was for mankind. And they don't even know it. They don't even know my sacrifices that I made for them. Not even just for myself. And I don't need that validation. But when I realized the other day, God told me something recently. God had somebody tell me something recently in a message. And I knew this to be true, but see, what you guys don't realize is I was closing down my heart. And I had to have it wide open to make it through all the return of Christ work. And I do mean wide open. And healing and vulnerable and painful, and I'm talking about like an ascension on crack, right? Like, it was very fast and it was very intense and it was nonstop, to where it was like hard to understand, hard to sit still and understand what was happening. And I would have to, at times, be forced to take that processing time because everything was happening so fast. But I had got to a point on my journey where I started closing down my heart for multiple reasons. One, it's really hard to get people to just click a link to see what you're saying is really what you're saying. and you really are who you say you are, and it should be honored and such a blessing and looked at with such a lens of love, but it wasn't. That was the first part. The second part was that my DM chose to succumb to things he shouldn't have and trying to stop the ascension, to getting a walk-in DM who still chose to choose other things over love. And then even God told me, yeah, you've never had unconditional love. And I haven't my whole life. How many of us can say that? A lot. A lot of us can say that. A lot of us can be honest, right? And say, we may never have had unconditional love in our whole entire life, from our parents to relationships to people that we wanted to love and we wanted them to love us. Then you realize how harsh the world is and how cold things truly have become. And when you've been hurt so much, and I do mean a lot, and realize that nobody's ever loved you, how do you love yourself in that? How do you love so deeply to soften your heart? Right? There's things in our lives sometimes that are so painful, and we get so to a point where, we're in a comfort zone and our heart is blocked in a very big degree. And we've grown accustomed to that. Some of us are pretty tough. I was one of them. It was pretty tough. Knew what I wanted, knew how to get what I wanted, knew how to be in the world that I was in. But the moment God says, okay, let's soften your heart, let's open your heart completely. Even if it's uncomfortable, let's get out of your comfort zone. Let's do things a little differently. It's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, pun intended, right? Like sometimes it's a lot to take in. And we realize how much suffering, how much pain, how much darkness and misery was the normal. How many relationships use emotional manipulation? Like, we can't even be emotionally mature in this broken world. It was extremely hard. So how do we trust when, if you trusted before, a lot of times it would end in pain, right? God is saying no more. So I understand that, we want to be saved. Well, we were saved. What I did is come in and I brought the opportunity of freedom. I undid all those shackles. I undid all that darkness, undoing the Holy Grail, clearing the pyramids, returning the Christ consciousness to the collective soul, opening the ability to have freedom. You were saved. But the thing is God won't take away your free will. And we can't carry that stuff with us because it doesn't align with true love, with unconditional love. That's God. So in order to get closer to God, we have to let go. We have to choose to let go. We have to choose the lens of love. So you were saved. Your lifeboat is here. You were saved. You were saved. Somebody said some stuff to me yesterday that really resonated in my heart space, and I didn't realize I needed to hear it. I didn't realize that those little words he may not even realize mattered so much. We all do want to be saved, but do we even know what that means? If we don't come to a realization on our own, if we don't come to these choices on our own sometimes, we're not in our full power. And God wants you in your full power. God is here to save you. God sent who he promised to save you. But it may not be what we thought it should be. And we must get out of what blinds us from seeing in order to see fully and to see clearly. And we must free our vessel from chemicals or even fun things just to be able to feel clearly. Because the more we can feel, the more we can see, the more clarity we have, the more power that can be. The more power we hold, the more truth we have, the more empowered we feel, and our passion we find. So God gave us free will. It also means that the more choices we make to rise to further love, we won't do it again. Because we can't bring these things through. They don't align with God. We can't be duality anymore. So the reasons and what brought us to doing those other things have to be healed and changed. So saved, yes, but also empowered. He gave us our power back, our freedom, our free will, which is what the shadow tried to take from us. It is what they diminished so much over so long. And they put us into this space where we thought that was living. We thought that was living. We thought that was happiness. We truly thought we were happy at times, you know? Like, I know I did. And I know my DM did. I know him. I don't know the new one, so I can't reference him, but I feel him most of the time. But I know we would get into these places of familiarity. It's what we knew. It's what we were accustomed to. And we would get into a survival mode, and our heart would become hardened because we weren't really truly living in our heart. And until we can get some separation from those things, until we get to a certain point away from those things, we can't see clearly. We can't clear those addictions. Trust me, I know. I've done it. All the way through the Adam and Eve timeline. That was intense. But it's real. I don't even ever want to touch that stuff again. It doesn't even excite me anymore. I'm like, thank God. Thank God I'm free. Thank God that enticement doesn't come up anymore. Thank God that distraction doesn't try to pull me from that feeling of love that I now know. My power, my truth, my wonderment, my abilities. But it takes a while to get there. And sometimes we grow so accustomed to people being in our lives. It's that codependency, right? And they may not be what's best for us. They may not be true unconditional love, but we don't know any better. That's what we're used to. And so sometimes it's really hard to let those go. And until one day you realize, man, thank God. Thank God. But even I got to a point recently where my heart needed more softening. My heart needed more softening because it was a harsh world we were living in, and people can't see very far. Not a lot of people house love. And me personally, I have never been loved unconditionally, not even by my DM. And so I told God, I don't care anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. What is the point? I did all the work. I did all the work. No matter what, the world is shifting. No matter what, the earth is changing. No matter what, it's rising. So what do I matter now? I don't need to do anything else. I was having a hard time softening my heart a little more. And just a few words from somebody out of the blue, they may never even know they impacted me through, let me know that to soften our heart takes strength, takes a willingness that God can't force you through. God can't force you through. And sometimes things matter more than we know until we're there. Until we do it, until we accept it. And then we don't realize how beautiful it can be. And maybe I'm not getting what I needed or wanted. And maybe I'm still not getting unconditional love. But why can't I put love into where it's not? That has to be a choice of free will. God will always give us what we ask for, but it may not be in the ways we expect it or we think we need it, but it's always in the way we actually need it. So in those moments where it's really difficult to just let things go, or we don't even see that we need to, right? But to just have faith and be still and allow our heart to soften just a bit more and just a bit more and maybe just a little bit more. Even when it's so hard, to do so. We don't get validations we need. We don't get recognition we need. We have to give it to ourselves. People may not see what I sacrificed for them, but I do. And I know God does. Right? People may not see the pain that we're suffering through or all the pain we've had in our whole life, but God does. He knows. And He never wanted that for you. He never wanted it for any of us. We were never meant to feel separation, division, and pain. We were never meant to feel judgment and ego. Those were all false conditionings of a world that was never meant to be ours. And when you think about all the carnage and the suffering and even having to change some of our fun comfort zones, it can piss you off. You get a little angry. Be like, why? Why would this happen? Why were these things allowed? Why do I have to let that go? That doesn't seem fair, does it? It's not. But then when you look at it a new way, you know what? God has said it's time to stop suffering. We weren't meant to have this sadness, this bloodshed, this separation, this trauma, this fear, this ego, this judgment. We weren't meant to not unconditionally love. And I may not know what that is yet, and I may have never felt it, but I know I give it. And I know it's okay to cry, and I know it's okay to try harder, and I know it's okay to hurt. But can I put love in there? Am I willing to put love where it was not, no matter what is happening around me? And that's what determines who's rising and who's not. Because God said, I freed you. But do you choose love? Are you ready to choose love? Are you ready to put in love where it's not? Are you ready to let things go that you've had fun with? Are you ready to grow? Because we can't take that stuff with us. It doesn't align. It's not what we were meant to be. And to let love into the toughest places in your heart is not always easy. It's not always easy. Because I told God, I don't know if I want to feel this pain. It's something that I have grown accustomed to dealing with and accustomed to burying and accustomed to surviving through. But if I don't let more love in there, I will never be free. And free feels good. It's an amazing feeling, but you don't know it until you get there. Until you truly are free. So even in the deepest, darkest of places in our heart space, we have to soften it. And I couldn't do that until I woke up this morning. Because I heard that person saying things in my head. And it wasn't about me. And it may not matter to that person, but it mattered to me. And it caused me to open my heart a little bit more. It caused me to open my heart a little bit more. And to just allow love in. Even if it's just from me. So we may not want to change. Some things we may not want to let go of. And we surely may not understand why all that suffering had to occur. And it's quite painful when you realize you've never really truly been loved unconditionally. But God does. God has no conditions on you other than love. Can you let love back into the deepest, darkest places? Even if it's hard, and even if you're the only one validating you. Or is it ego that you want to listen to? Well, I can't do it without this, and I can't do it without that, and I need this first, God. I need this first. I need them to love me. What if they can't? What if they don't know how? What if it starts with you? What if it starts with you? When you realize what we're letting go of is all that pain and division and suffering, it's a lot more easier to let go. When you realize that being able to feel every inch of your emotions, every wave of your emotions is so good, even in the hardest of times, it's so good. It's easier to let that go. When you realize, when you're fully whole and you have all your power back and you realize, man, what I know now what I was missing. I know now where I was not whole. I know it feels good. It's a lot easier to let those things go. When you realize the new earth is about pure love and sovereignty and unconditional love, and no lies and freedom, but a different freedom than you're used to, because it's a perceived freedom that you had. So did God come to save us? He did. He set us free. And that means giving our power back. Free will. I have a choice. God wouldn't force me to do anything. That wouldn't feel so good, would it? Like if you just had a savior and you got swept away into the newness, and then you might look back and go, wait, was I ready? Was I truly ready to let those things go? So were we saved? Yeah, we were. But now we choose to rise. What a beautiful gift is free will. It's a beautiful gift. God isn't forcing me to love myself unconditionally. He isn't forcing you to change, because you don't have to. You just can't remain here doing the same things you did before, because the world has now returned to what it once was. But if you give yourself enough time to separate yourself from those things, you just might find it's exactly what you were looking for. So for the new earth, you just have to give yourself permission to go into the unfamiliar until it becomes familiar again, because it will. And you have to give yourself permission to soften those hearts into the toughest of places. Give yourself permission to be a little vulnerable so you can feel strength again. Give yourself permission to love unconditionally with boundaries and know what that means. Give yourself permission, because God set you free, but He won't take away your free will. He doesn't want to force you to do anything. And the most beautiful part about it is you choose to do it when you're ready. When you're ready to see that God didn't cause the suffering. He brought you the way home. And it's up to you to choose more love into the toughest of places and to let all those things go. And then you just might find the most beautiful feelings, the most beautiful experiences you've never known. And it's hard to understand what those are because you've never known them. So you have to go into the space of the unknown and to have new experiences of true love. So are you willing to soften your heart even in the toughest of places? And are you really willing to be in your own power and choose love? Those are the keys, my friend. Those are the keys. And is it always pretty and sunshine? Hell no. Sometimes it hurts like an SOB. But is it worth it when you get to the other side? You just might find that it is. So what do you choose? Because God set you free. God brought your Savior. But it is up to you to see, and it's up to you to choose love. That is why only the pure hearts will rise above. What a gift to have free will. It is the shadow that took that away. We just found our comfort zones in it. And some of those felt good. But did they really? You just might find something amazing on the other side. You just might. Beyond what the mind can see, but truly into what the heart can feel. Can you soften your heart just a little more? Can you choose to see beyond that anger, that fear, those shackles that kept you bound and unclear? Because we can't see fully until we're on the other side. We can't see fully until we've separated ourselves enough and long enough from those things. Once you've given yourself enough healing, and once you've let enough love into those hardest places of the heart, you will find that is where true love really is. That is where amazing things are felt and seen, and things we are not used to. A little scary at times, but it's not. All God is asking you to do is let love in, even if it's not easy. Even if you have to do it alone, or people might judge you because they can't see either. They couldn't see just like you couldn't see until you separated yourself enough from what was blinding you and kept letting love in to soften your heart, even if others are hurting you. That's not always easy. I have never had unconditional love, but I have come to a place where I understand it now. And not only do I give it out, now I give it out with love for myself. Can you let love in to the toughest places of your heart? So much love, my friends. Soften your heart. Choose freedom. God gave you free will, but He saved you. And He brought everything you needed. He's got everything you need. And He's right by your side. We'll always hear you. We'll never let you down. We'll never leave you astray. It just may not be what we think we need, but it will always be exactly what we need. And then some. If you soften your heart. Let love in again, my friends. Even more. Until next time, have a beautiful day. And thank you for being you, and I love you unconditionally.